We have breaking news on CBS Sports HQ. The Carson Wentz deal is about to get done. Our Jason Lockett-Ford confirming that the Eagles are trading Wentz to the Colts. Now, Philadelphia receives a third-round pick in this year's draft and a conditional second-round pick in the 2022 draft. That doesn't sound like much, but it appears as though if Wentz plays 75% of the snaps, that second rounder in 2022 would become a first round pick. But the bottom line is Carson Wentz is heading out of Philly to Indy, where he would presumably take over as the starting quarterback there with Phillip Rivers retiring. Going to have a ton on this over the next 30 minutes or so here on CBS Sports HQ, joined first by Pete Prisco. What's your reaction?
Well, the Colts need a quarterback, and Frank Reich clearly knows Carson Wentz very well, so it makes some sense from that standpoint. I'm a little surprised they didn't get more in return, but the market out there wasn't great. It just wasn't a great market for Carson Wentz. Obviously, his play has leveled off and even declined in a big way in recent years, and there's some concern as to whether that's more of a trend than an aberration. In fairness to him, Chris, the offensive line has been brutal. The receivers have been terrible. They haven't really been able to run the ball consistently, and it's hard to play quarterback when you have all those problems. So maybe a new start with a new team and a good offensive line will be good for Carson Wentz.
Okay, so what are the Indianapolis Colts getting? That is the million-dollar question. Can you even begin to answer it, Pete?
No, you can't because, before his knee injury a couple years ago, he was considered an MVP candidate. He was playing at a high level. And then they had all kinds of, he had the injury. He had some more injuries. They had all kinds of injury issues around him. And it was hard at times to really get a bearing on what he could do as a quarterback because he'd go back into the pocket and he'd look lost at times. So, no, I don't think they know. I don't think we know. But Frank Reich knows him very well. And I think he thinks that, hey, he's 28 years old. Maybe we can turn him around. And we saw the Colts. They were a playoff team last year with Phillip Rivers. If they get the same level of play that they got from Phillip Rivers, they could be a playoff team again. And look at the division. Houston has a mess on its hands. Jacksonville's building to something, but they're probably, going to push for a playoff spot this year. I can't say they're going to win the division. And then you have Tennessee and the Colts fighting it out. So it makes sense for them to go get a quarterback, a veteran quarterback with what they have around them. They also need to get faster. T.Y. Hilton's an unrestricted free agent. They need help outside their passing game for whoever was going to play quarterback and now for Carson Wentz.
Okay, I think a lot of Eagles fans feeling some mixed emotion here because I'm sure a lot of them have Carson Wentz jerseys. As you mentioned, he probably would have won MVP a few years ago had he not gotten injured. He was a big part of that Super Bowl winning team, although he did not play in the postseason. How are you feeling right now if you're an Eagles fan?
Well, I think you're ready to move on from him. I heard a lot of criticism of Wentz. He didn't win the Super Bowl. Obviously, Nick Foles did, the greatest accident in the history of sports, and Wentz didn't get any credit for that. If Wentz had played that postseason and won the Super Bowl, would he be being traded right now? Probably not, but he didn't, and so they're peddling him out. Remember, they gave him a long-term contract extension. They thought he was going to be the long-term answer. It just hasn't worked out. They drafted Jalen Hurts. He moves a lot better. Clearly, that was evident last year when he went and played behind that bad offensive line. I think they're excited to build around Jalen Hurts and see what he can do. So moving forward, look, Howie Roseman loved Carson Wentz. He was his draft pick. Making this deal tells you all you need to know about where the organization stands in terms of backing Jalen Hurts.
So you think it's going to be Jalen Hurts, and they're not going to use one of their top picks? They have the number 6 overall pick on another quarterback?
Well, that is a possibility, but I think, you hire Brian Johnson to be the quarterback's coach. He's very familiar with Jalen Hurts. You used a second-round pick on Hurts last year. He did some good things when he played. Didn't really have an offseason to really get established as a quarterback on that team. I think now I would probably move in a different direction. I would probably play Jalen Hurts and see what I have with him there. Look, Zach Wilson's going to be gone. Trevor Lawrence is going to be gone. I think there's a little bit of a drop down after those two, whether it's, Fields or Lance or any of those guys. Yeah, could they look at that? I'm sure they will explore other options. But again, I think you used that pick on Jalen Hurts last year with the idea that he could eventually be the replacement for Carson Wentz.
All right, if you're the Colts, what's the one thing they have to get fixed right away with Carson Wentz to get him headed back in the right direction?
Left tackle. Anthony Costanzo retired, and that's a big loss to their offensive line. That offensive line is one of the best in the NFL. Without Anthony Costanzo, they need to fill the left tackle spot, and I think they will try and figure that out, whether through free agency or through the draft, because you have to get better up there. That line has been a strength of the Colts for the last couple years. It wasn't that way with Andrew Luck, and we saw what happened. So get a left tackle, fix the line, and let Wentz play behind a line that can actually protect him.
Okay, so what would you say the biggest issue for Wentz's demise has been? Has it been the fact that the Eagles haven't had an offensive line?
Well, that's been a big part of the problem. All the weapons getting hurt, major issue. It's hard to throw to guys. Look at the guys he was throwing. Remember, Greg Ward was the star receiver, and he was a former college quarterback. That you can't, really have success throwing the football with that limited amount of weapons on the outside. So I think it's a combination of things, and also, where was his headspace? How much was he dedicated to the craft? You hear all this talk about he wasn't a great teammate and, he cared more about himself. Well, you can't do that when you're playing the quarterback position. So I think a lot of it falls on his injury, their injuries, bad offensive line play, lack of weapons, and whether he really took over and became the guy that teammates want to rally around as the quarterback.
All right, Carson Wentz is headed to Indianapolis. They may end up getting a first-rounder in return, they being the Philadelphia Eagles, if he does play 75% of the snaps. Pete, thank you so much.
Let's welcome in one of our NFL insiders, Jonathan Jones. And JJ, we'll just start your reaction to this news.
Yeah, I mean, this is where it was always going to go. This is where Carson Wentz was always going to end up. It was going to be the Indianapolis Colts. And Howie Roseman, the GM of the Philadelphia Eagles and that franchise, they were never going to get what they wanted to for Carson Wentz. And there are any number of factors for that. Number one, and really chief among them, is that Carson Wentz played like one of the worst quarterbacks who was a regular starter in the NFL throughout the entire season. Yes, his offensive line was depleted. Sure, there were injuries at the wide receiver position, but over time, throughout the season, it really bared it out. And frankly, for what would be, I think, the third time in his career, the team played better without him than with him. We saw everyone's confidence and play level rise up when Jalen Hurts went into the game as opposed to when Carson Wentz was in there. So there was his play tied to his contract, which is just set to begin from that extension from a couple of years ago. And then, Carson Wentz didn't do Philly any favors by his camp leaking out, really for the last 3 months, every bit of his feelings along the way, including, but certainly not limited to, where he wanted to end up. And Indianapolis was very clearly at the top of the list. So the rest of the league, if they wanted Carson Wentz, understood that Indy was the place that he wanted to go. And they also saw his behavior over the last year and realized, I don't know, even if we want to get him, if Indy doesn't want him, do we want him in here with that salary, with his play? Is he going to get back to that 2017 form? And finally, Amanda, I'll talk about that 2017 form. That was a long time ago. And yes, he was right there in the MVP discussion. I think, maybe Tom Brady had eclipsed him at the point where he did have that knee injury, but most certainly was in the top 3 at the time of that knee injury. But 2017 was a long time ago. Todd Gurley was the Offensive Player of the Year that year, and no one thinks that Todd Gurley is a franchise running back anymore. So can he get back to that form? Sure, and the Philadelphia Eagles will receive a first-round draft pick if he indeed does get back to that form with the Indianapolis Colts, and then it'll be as much a win-win as possible. But right now, you want to talk about who won the trade or who lost the trade? I think very clearly by getting Carson Wentz for just a third-round pick, something that's probably going to be in the mid-80s as well as a conditional second-rounder, I would say absolutely Chris Ballard and the Colts won this trade.
JJ, you said if he can get back to this form, and you said sure. So he went 3-8-1 as a starter before Jalen Hurts replaced him. He also had a league-high 19 turnovers. So what is your confidence level, though, in Wentz when he is now with the Colts?
Well, it seemed like a lot of Carson Wentz's issues were between the ears, and we saw that really in week 1 where he took all those sacks against Washington, and it snowballed from there. He held the ball for too long. He wasn't making the throws that he should have made. And again, the team immediately played better as soon as Jalen Hurts entered the game. And frankly, former Eagles coach Doug Peterson waited too long to make the switch. And we've heard the stuff about Wentz being a poor teammate. And, you know, maybe there was some of that held Doug Peterson back from making that switch. But what's he going to be? How high is my confidence that he's going to return to that form? It's really hard to play quarterback at an elite level in the NFL. And make no mistake about it, Carson Wentz in 2017 was absolutely doing that. So I feel like people say offhandedly, oh, if he gets back to that level, it's really hard to get back to that level. Even if he played like an average quarterback this past year, it's still hard to get to that level. And he played like a bottom 3, and frankly, I could make the argument that he was the worst regular starter in the NFL last season. So to think that he's going to all of a sudden jump to a top 7 or 8 quarterback in a year when so much of it seemed to be between the ears, I don't have a great deal of confidence in that. However, no doubt he has the physical tools, and hopefully he's healthy enough to get there. And yes, maybe a change of scenery is exactly what he needed. Certainly, he needed it to some degree or another. So now he's back with Frank Reich. He's in a place that needs a quarterback that has a lot of talent, certainly has a defense that can help carry the offense. Now, I look at the Colts. They're going to need some help at wide receiver. Paris Campbell can't really stay healthy. T.Y. Hilton may be on his way out. They certainly need a left tackle as well with the retirement of Anthony Costanzo, and I would not move Quentin Nelson out to tackle. I'd keep him at guard as one of the best guards that the NFL has seen in the last 20 years. So they have their holes that they have to fill, but they have plenty of cap space. They have a few more draft picks. They're picking, I think, at 21, so they can get a pretty decent player that should be able to start in week 1, re-sign cornerback Xavier Rhodes. You have a playoff team from last year with Phillip Rivers to next year, so long as Carson Wentz plays like an average quarterback. And frankly, after this past season, all of that is going to be on Carson Wentz.
All right, so fairly optimistic there when it comes to the Colts, but let's talk about the Eagles in this position. So you have Jalen Hurts. The Eagles do, and you were right, the Colts have the 21st overall pick in the draft. The Eagles have the 6th overall pick in the draft. That is seemingly a pick they really wanted after losing to Washington there in week 17, jumping up from 9 to 6 there. So do you stick with Hurts? Are you looking at another quarterback, JJ? What do you do here?
I think you feel good, okay, with going into week 1. If Jalen Hurts is your starter, if he has won it in training camp, you can pick a quarterback at 6. I think that Jalen Hurts would probably beat out whoever they get at 6. But also, I think that you should be looking at backup quarterback. This is also a team, very frankly, they have a whole bunch of needs. They have linebacker issues. They have corner issues. They very clearly need a wide receiver because they're probably going to have to cut Alshon Jeffrey and Deshaun Jackson. You know, Zach Ertz, they're going to have to deal him at some point. They need some cap relief there. You know, Jason Peters is a free agent. So is Jalen Mills. So is Nickel Roby-Coleman. So they're going to have a lot of holes over there. And so is the best value at 6 to go after quarterback that maybe you believe in or maybe you don't? At that point, you could be picking the 3rd or 4th quarterback. You have to believe in that guy if you do so. I saw enough from Jalen Hurts to believe that he is worthy of a week 1 starter role and continue to develop. However, if you think that the guy that's going to be your starter for 15 years is sitting there at 6, you absolutely take him. But if I were the Eagles, at least right now, I would certainly watch how this free agent quarterback market is going to shake as it relates to the backup quarterbacks. You know, you look at a Tyrod Taylor, for example. What's Ryan Fitzpatrick going to do? Perhaps a Cam Newton, a guy who is not going to, sign with a team as a starter. He may very well wind up as a starter in 2021, but does he allow himself to go in knowing that he's going to be a backup, probably not competing for that week 1 starting role, so long as there's not any injuries? And then you just see how the draft shakes out. It's far too early. Right now I'm hearing nonsense about Zach Wilson being a better quarterback than Trevor Lawrence. Listen, it's already crazy times, so we'll see how all of that shakes out. But if I'm the Eagles, I'm certainly in free agency. I'm looking at linebacker. I'm looking at wide receiver. I'm looking at corner. And then after that, in probably the second wave of free agency, I'm looking to get a veteran backup quarterback on a vet minimum because you have no cap room to sign anyone to any sort of legitimate deal.
Jonathan Jones, we appreciate your insight and you hopping on here for this breaking news. Thank you so much. Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.